And this video is going to save you months, if not years, of unnecessary delay, because I'm going to share with you 5 things that I did not need to start my photography business. I started at home with kids, not much time on my hands, not much of a budget without a studio, etc. But I was able to book clients. First thing, and actually this might be a shock to you, but the first thing that I did not need to actually start was a camera. I spoke about this in my previous video of how I got my first clients. Actually, I started by shooting or taking photos of my own child. I did a photo shoot for him, and I was using a camera that I had borrowed from a friend. So I've spoken about this before, where I say you can actually borrow or rent your gear to start with. By the time that I actually was able to book my first paying client, I did have a camera, but even that, it wasn't like the best camera. It wasn't a very fancy camera. It was a crop sensor camera, which is not a full frame, and I didn't have the best of lenses or the recommended lenses that you would hear photographers telling you about. I had just a lens that had come, because the camera that I had, it was a kit. So it came with what they call a kit lens. So, and usually those lenses are not like very good. That's usually one of the first things that you want to upgrade to, is a good lens. But I was able to use it and take photos, and they paid me. You know, actually, when it comes to gear, your client, most of the time, they don't really know much about cameras and the different cameras and the different models, crop sensor, full frame. They're not really looking for gear when they come to a photographer. What a client is looking for is the images. So what results can you produce for them? So I always recommend that you have some kind of a portfolio, photos that you have taken, so that they are able to see what can they expect from you. So if your client already knows what they can expect from you, then it doesn't really matter the gear that you use to achieve those results. And you know, there are some people who are actually booking shoots and they are doing it with phones, so not even a camera. I know of my sister-in-law in the UK. She once booked a photo shoot for her mom, who was about to turn 60, and the lady took the photos with her phone. And even my sister-in-law was kind of like shocked, because she did not expect that. But she booked her because she saw the results, that this is okay, this is the results that I'm looking for. And then she went ahead and booked the person, and she actually paid £150 for that. So I say, do not let gear stop you from starting. Just manage expectations. That's it. Okay, second thing, also very close to that, is expensive lighting or light modifiers and hey, all those things. I started with natural light. Even for studio type of photos, I started with natural light. Luckily, I had a sliding door, so then that's what I used to use as my main source of light. Even till today, I still use a mix of natural light and some additional light. And even now, I don't really have the best of lighting or the best. I try to keep it very simple. In fact, it's only now that I'm going to go ahead and buy myself like a nice umbrella. But I started with natural light, then I moved on to speed light that I could put on my camera, which we call on-camera flash. And then I learned how to be bouncing it off the wall and the ceiling and things like that. Only now, actually, just this year, I bought myself a trigger so that I can be able to not put it on my camera, but have it as an off-camera flash. And now I'm going to go ahead and buy a modifier. So, hey, no, man. Once you learn how to at least work with natural light, you understand the direction of light, that's what matters. And I would argue that It's good to work with natural light at first and learn how light works before you even go ahead and start with artificial lighting. And like I said before, if you don't have it, you can rent it or borrow. I will always say that one. Okay, third thing I did not need was a studio. I've always been shooting at home. And, it also depends. Okay, like I said, at least I had a lounge, a living room, and my home was, I would say, a decent place that I could bring my clients into. I would make sure that it's very clean. And I started in a very tiny lounge, so that meant that I had to even take out my dining table and my chairs and put it outside or sometimes in the garage so that I could have the space to shoot. In fact, I couldn't even extend my stand fully. But now, where I am now, I still shoot in my living room, but I've moved now to a bigger space. So I don't need to move out any furniture now. I just rearrange the furniture to make the space. Like I say, you can still achieve great results that people with expensive gear and the best lighting and the best studios achieve. You can still achieve it at home with minimal equipment. What matters, do you know how to work with your space that you have? And do you know how to work with the equipment that you have? And obviously, it depends on what kind of photography you are going into. You can start with outdoor shoots where you're just shooting outside. The world is our studio, the world is the stage. Actually, in one of my future videos, I'm actually going to show you how I set up at home and how I prep my place for a shoot. Okay, number 4, a website. I didn't have any website until last year. And to be quite honest, it's not even serving me much. For now, I know I have to do some work and optimize it in a way that it can truly work for me. But most of my photo shoots came through word of mouth, social media, etc. What's important is that you have a place where you can showcase your work. So be it on social media or, one of the things that I used to do, because I used to have to understand that not everyone has social media. So sometimes what I would do is I would just take a bunch of photos and put them inside a Google Drive so that if anyone approaches me, maybe they heard from a friend or somebody that I do photography, and then they now come to maybe contact me, then I would just send them a link and where they could see and get a sense of the type of work that I can produce. Because remember, I told you it's very important to manage expectations so that people don't come expecting something that you are not able to do. And having prices, whether you have a PDF or things like that. And in my previous video, I talked about setting up your WhatsApp business like a website. It's such a great tool. Please go and watch that video if you do not have a website. But I think even if you do have a website, you should be setting up your WhatsApp business like a website. Create a catalog that makes it easier for your clients to at least see your photos, see your prices, and whatever relevant information that you need to put there to better serve your clients. So please do check that video out. Number 5, and this one I do want to say it in a careful way so that we don't misunderstand each other. But the number 5 thing that I did not need was a qualification, like a photography degree or something like that. I believe you do not need to have a formal photography qualification before you can start a photography business or before you can venture into photography, whether be it a hobby or something like that. I know some people argue the opposite, but what I will say is it also depends on what type of photography are you going into? A lot of things you can learn by trial and error. A lot of things you can learn on the go. You can learn through practice. You can learn also through workshops. Like a lot of photographers, they do workshops. You can learn through courses, books, etc., things like that. There's information, so much information for us. Honestly, we are spoiled for that here on YouTube as well. For example, if it's something like landscape photography, you can go outside and start taking photos. Events photography, maybe you can be volunteering when there's events around you and things like that. But for example, newborn photography, I would say that is something that is a little bit tricky, because here now we are dealing with a newborn baby. So safety is a definite key thing. It's a concern for someone, especially if you've never held a baby, you don't know how to hold a baby, you don't know how to handle a newborn baby. At least for us who are mothers, I say it's a little bit better, because for example, I'm a mother of 3. I know how to hold babies. I know how I've raised babies. I understand. I know how to dress up babies and things like that. But even for us, there are still some things like learning how do you make your space safe for the newborn baby. Like, you know, there are a lot of things. There are just some poses that we shouldn't even be doing. Your equipment, how do you handle your equipment so that you don't mistakenly drop it on a child, for example? Things like that. You know, I would say you would need to at least educate yourself on some of those things before you even say, I'm going to start taking photos of newborn babies. And also, just because we start this way, we start with little or with nothing or little to nothing, it does not mean that we have to stay that way. So for example, for me, I'm planning on attending some courses, you know, workshops and things like that, because I believe that this is a skill that you can keep improving on, and even the business side of things. So I just want to say that just because you don't have that qualification, it doesn't have to be a barrier to entry. You can still start, and then you can acquire those things as you go along the way. Well, I hope this was helpful to you in some way. If it was, please do share, like, subscribe. I hope to see you in my next video. And as always, stay blessed and stay creative. Goodbye.